We are April and Scott, creators of NaughtyGym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing.
All right, this is Scott and April, and we're back for our next episode of the Naughty Gym Show. We've got a fantastic guest today. His name is Martin MacDonald, and he is... Martin, I don't even actually know where you live.
Just England, I guess. UK for all of it. That's as much as people probably know about the UK.
I knew you didn't sound like you live anywhere near us.
Yeah.
But Martin is a clinical performance nutritionist, a podcaster, a little bit of a philosopher, but he's also a non-monogamist. A little bit of everything. He's got an incredible Instagram, incredible podcast. So make sure after this episode you go and check him out on all of his platforms.
Yeah, we ran across you. Our feed on all our social media accounts is full of two things: health and wellness people and sex positive people. And so it was bound to happen, I think, that we would eventually run into you on social media. But we're incredibly happy to have you on the show, and we've got 1 million questions. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've never been introduced as a philosopher, April, so I appreciate that. That's I'm going to add that to my bio. That's a big compliment.
Anybody who has seen your social medias and also listened to your podcast would, I think, come to that conclusion.
Thank you.
Why not? I want that tag.
I'll introduce you. Well, I did say you and Martin have a lot of the same thought processes, just from listening to his podcast. So,
all right. Well, so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but primarily what we were interested in talking to you for is because we share so many common elements in our lives. We're all interested in fitness and nutrition, and are also in a type of open relationship. And that intersection between those two worlds, the health and wellness and consensual non-monogamy of some form, has become the focus of our life. And it sounds like probably has started becoming a primary focus of yours as well.
Yeah. It's I had someone when I started my new Instagram account. I've got kind of the two, which someone sort of said, "Oh, do you think starting this new account where you talk more about these other topics will impact your other account or your business?" And I said, well, the basis for this new account is being non-judgmental, being body positive, being kind and thoughtful and evidence-based. So as far as I'm concerned, they are exactly along the same lines. It's just one focuses on the nutrition side of being evidence-based, health, living your life well, and the other one focuses more on some maybe other philosophical topics, the E&M. My first ever post on that new account, it had like maybe 6 or 7 or 9 topics I was going to talk about. But as soon as I launched the account, people only wanted to know about E&M, anything sex positivity, my relationships. That's all the questions I ever got. I'm like, I want to talk about, my thoughts on religion or feminism or sort of something that, no, just talk to me about blowjobs. It's like, oh God.
So the focus of our show today is blowjobs.
Well, that's, one of the first things I ever saw of you guys was one of your, like an outtakes video saying, if you want to get good at anal or like butt stuff, it's just like, yeah, crack me up. Yeah.
That's what grabs people's attention, right?
Yeah. Best performing videos, and it was like a compilation of videos. Well,
I loved it.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that intersection of all of those things, because that was the big focus of a major event we just put on in Jamaica back in early January, where we was at Hedonism Resort. There was 400 and something plus people there, and we brought in sex therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, sex coaches, and put them all in a big pot, mixed it together, and in the end, it just became this really magical, almost like adult camp, summer camp type feel. But by the time it was over, everybody was crying and didn't want to leave, because I think, at least partially, the reason for that chemistry, that connection between everyone, is that finally they were able to take all of these separate pieces of their lifestyle puzzle and put them together and talk about them. And it was really a magical moment. So
that sounds so nice.
You're a perfect fit for that type of outlook on life for us.
Yeah. That's it is nice in terms of, I think it's another big reason, like April, you said about my podcast, I was always very conflicted in terms of some of the other topics I wanted to talk about. It's just like, I'm the nutrition guy and always have been, but I wanted to talk. And that's why I have like nutrition and then the title of the podcast, and then business and the title of the podcast, and then wisdom and the title of the podcast, because it's that philosophy or philosophical views, or living your life well, or like what is happiness. And it feels like people love to put people in boxes. So, as soon as someone becomes a parent, it's like, you have to stop going out partying. And it's like, people lose their identity because they're growing up, and then, mums and dads are just get upset and unhappy. And people who don't have kids are then like, oh, I've lost all my friends. Whereas you don't have to live these separate lives. It's just, sadly, society and people do just box people off of. With me, it's crazy. They're like, oh, you're an academic, you speak very well. And people have said, oh, you seem so vanilla. And then they're like, you're really not vanilla. And I'm like, there's nothing about me that you should be able to say whether I'm vanilla or not. Like, I'm not boring. I've got a great sense of humor. But it's, you must not be into that because you're a scientist. And it's like, no, like, I reckon Einstein was a freak.
You're an academic nerd. No way you're doing any of this cool stuff.
Tell us a little bit about your background as far as your education, because a clinical performance nutritionist, but anybody, when I've watched your stuff, you're very research and evidence-based, which I absolutely love. You debunk a bunch of like nutrition myths, and so tell us a little bit about
that. My background academically, I was in the kind of sports science, sports nutrition, performance nutrition world. And as a kind of late teenager, I started going down the degrees and master's route. And I actually competed in natural bodybuilding for 5 years, but I wasn't very good at it. But I really enjoyed the nutritional pursuit of it, the kind of discipline. And actually I learned so much from it because I did so much wrong. The types of coaches and the big names in the industry, because this is when I started doing that's over 20 years ago now. And so it's like back then a lot of the messages were really bad, as I'm sure you guys will have sort of been through all of the fads and phases that the industry's gone through. So I ended up with really bad eating habits, disordered eating, and a really poor relationship with food. And so But at the same time, I was studying academically, but my studies were much more towards performance nutrition. So Team GB, going to the Olympics. I was the lead nutritionist for British weightlifting, Paralympic powerlifting. I worked in professional football. So that was my earlier career. But I ended up weirdly doing some stuff on TV, and then a celebrity or her agent got in contact with me and said, oh, she wants to do this fat loss DVD, and we want the angle to be that we're doing it in an evidence-based way. We contacted the universities and your name kept coming up. Can we talk to you? And she ended up mentioning me on like the biggest trashy daytime television talk shows like 3 times. And my career just went a totally different direction. And so then I went back to school because sort of as someone who I try and live with integrity, I was like, I'm working with all these people on weight loss and lots of clinical situations. I was like, oh, I wasn't working with them. I was getting inquiries. So I went back to school and did a postgraduate in clinical nutrition. So that's how I've got this clinical performance nutritionist title, which I gave myself, but it sounds cool, right? I've actually seen.
Got to work on my titles.
Yeah, philosopher and clinical performance nutritionist. That's my LinkedIn from now on. But yeah, so that's how my nutrition consultancy was born, and so that went on for maybe sort of 8 years. And then just because I love social media, I love public speaking is my thing. I could just do that all day long. I absolutely love it. And so I ended up getting sort of some followers, and lots of professionals, fitness professionals started following me, and I started doing education weekends. And then essentially what happened was people were like, oh, you should create a course for people because there's all these other courses out there, lots of them, even the biggest and best ones from America and Canada, they still have lots of elements of bro science or pseudoscience in them. Or they have one method that they teach you rather than teaching you to be this sort of nutritional agnostic. And these are the tools, now work with the human being in front of you. So anyway, I ended up, we created Mac Nutrition Uni, our nutrition qualification. And it just, honestly, it was supposed to be like a little course on YouTube, a sidearm of our business. And it just blew up. It went global. Couldn't believe it. And so we had to close down our nutrition consultancy, and that was 2016. And we haven't done anything else since other than just flying by the seat of our pants, trying to get a handle on working with people in 80 plus countries. Wow. And just like students from all over the world, and it's cool. I honestly feel so privileged for just being in the right time at the right place with the right resources. And I feel like I sort of benefited because I'd been giving out free information for 10 years and just, like you said, just trying to help people, educate people, and trying to educate professionals, not general population. So I had this small but very loyal following. And then from there, 2016, my account's not huge. I'd love to have millions of followers. Like I would love it. Like people say, oh, you shouldn't celebrate followers. But I'm like, the more followers I have, the more I can influence. And I feel like my influence in the world is a positive one. So why wouldn't I want more followers? Yeah. So like I was shit at what I did when I just had just academic qualifications. And I think everyone in the industry knows that when you start working with real humans, you go, oh, what I learned doesn't apply in the way they said it did. And because I love maths, I'm like a mathematical person. But when you work with humans, it's like you can do all the maths, but if someone doesn't follow your perfect macro split or calories, it's just rubbish. It doesn't work. So that for me was a big thing in terms of I knew stuff. I was misinformed because I was listening to the biggest name in the industry who was shouting about the optimal macro ratios for different body types and toxins that were causing you not to be able to lose fat, when it's just all excuses for forcing people to eat restrictive diets and just cut foods and cut calories without having to say, actually, it's just about what you're eating and how much you're eating, and helping people from a behavioral perspective, which is where really the magic lies, I think.
Well, so it's primarily your business now is teaching people how to coach nutrition.
Yeah, so Mac Nutrition Uni, it's a qualification, and we actually just last year, I think it was last year, we became a government accredited, regulated qualification. So that was huge for us. So we set up in 2016 just as a professional, like anyone can. Someone just creates a course, but because of the way we do it, like my background, which I kind of skipped, is I was a lecturer at university. So after I'd done my degree and master's, and I just didn't like the red tape, the politics. And that's when that lady mentioned me on TV, and I was like, I don't need to be a university lecturer anymore. I'll go and do my own talks, because I just love teaching. like that's my passion. I thought I had to be a teacher to teach. But you can just teach people through podcasts, right? Like this, and do your own talks and stuff. So yeah, that's that we created our qualification. It became government regulated, so people can now become fully qualified, insurable nutritionists through our course. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, so you've got now this growing and thriving coaching business, but you've launched. I'm not sure exactly when you did the second Instagram account, but it's E&M focused. It looks like primarily. It may not have been. So when did you start that account, and what was the impetus for it? Why did you want to do that?
Yeah, so I should probably look on my phone. It's only been going like a few months. I'm trying to think when I launched it. What are we in now? February. So just like the back end of last year, I launched that. And I actually probably 6 months before that just said on my story, look, there's all these other topics I like to talk about. Sort of adult humor was one of the things that I thought, and that kind of goes with sex positivity, but I was just like, I want to tell these 18 plus jokes. My nutrition account tends to be very family friendly. People do like it that I used to do loads of stories, 20 stories a day, just education and polls and chatting and whatever. And I wouldn't swear. I keep it on topic. And I'd just make little innuendos, a bit like, I do love the way some of the bigger, like Disney or whoever, you always get these like jokes that are just for the parents, like really subtle adult jokes. But I wanted to just make, because me and sort of my partners and friends, the kind of jokes we would share are extreme. And so I wanted to and I'd see stuff on my algorithm, because obviously the algorithm knows everything. And I'd want to share it with people who might find it funny too. But then I can't just be like 1 minute like, oh, carbohydrates and fiber. And then the next minute, like
titties.
Yeah, like whatever.
You also give like nutrition advice and stuff for parents, for their children and stuff like that. So that I can see that would probably not.
Yeah. So the impetus was just being more myself, wanting to just, because it as much as I've never really done my nutrition stuff as a business, really, I just love talking about nutrition my whole life. It's something that really helps people. People are so, if I go to a wedding, I like being the center of attention, but my job also makes me that way, because you say that at a dinner table and everyone's like, oh, they're all asking you questions. So then I'm buzzing because it's like, oh, look at me, center of attention. But then you can really help people. So then it's like, that gives you more of that, dopamine hit. So yeah, I guess the new account was then, there's these other things I want to talk about. Some things which I think I'm not an expert, quote unquote expert on, but I think through my podcast, my wisdom podcast talking about like gratitude and happiness, living a virtuous life. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I kind of realized, I am a deep thinker. I may not be an expert, but I think very heavily about certain topics, and I think have a very balanced view, and am able to, I think it is a skill you learn, and something I've learned very well through nutrition is critical thinking. So I apply that to other areas. So I was like, do you know what? I'm really enjoying this. People were loving it and sort of saying this really helped me in a dark time. So I thought, I'm just going to create this new account where I might ruffle some feathers if I talk about religion or feminism and or sex positivity or E&M. But at least people have signed up to nutrition there, and that's what I'll talk about there, while still being myself. But here, I also don't care what you think. So if you get upset because of a meme about eating ass, then cool, you can go somewhere else. I saw that face, Scott.
Well,
approval.
To this, we have a similar setup in that we have our vanilla social media accounts, and then we have our naughty gym, and they don't really mix.
Yeah,
it drives me nuts because I don't like having to. I don't like presenting like I'm one way and having
or feeling like you have something to hide.
Right. I cannot stand. I'm an oversharer, and I cannot stand having to hide aspects of myself. Not that I think everybody wants to know about my sex life. There's probably like 3 people in the world that care. But I hate feeling like I have to, that I'm going to get in trouble if I share that side of me. And so it makes me want to share it, even though there's probably very few people that care to hear about it.
Yeah.
But that other account for you may serve in that capacity where it allows you to feel like, okay, I can publicly be myself here at least. Maybe not on my bigger, more professional account, but
It's so funny you've said that. It was either the shower today or yesterday. I was honestly thinking, I can't be bothered to have 2 accounts. I'll just stop sharing my the fact that I'm a parent, and I'll just make this account all about me. But then I'm like, like my children, I love them. They're like the biggest part of my life. So then I'm like, I have to keep 2 accounts. So it's annoying that I just have to live based on other people's values, but I also don't want to unnecessarily offend people, because people are offended easily, let's be honest. So on my new account, I said no snowflakes. The day I announced it, I got 1,000 like requests to follow. I made it private, so everyone had to request, and instantly 1,000 followers. And I was like, no snowflakes. You will be offended. I will actively try and offend you just so that I know the people who remain are cool and just not losers.
serves as a filter.
Yeah, and so it's just like, look, because we can all get offended. Like, being offended isn't the issue. It's making your offense someone else's problem. Like, you could say something to offend me and I'd just go, oh, that didn't sit well with me. I'm not feeling well today. Or, my family member is sick and you've made a joke about that illness. Like, cool, be offended, but it's not your fault because it's just comedy. It's just a joke.
That we are almost impossible to offend,
Yeah.
because how you feel about something has no relevance to me.
Yeah.
And so if it does, that's the problem.
Yeah. And on social media, you have the choice, right? Like, you can just go, oh, swipe off it or not follow. It's just like, just carry on with your life.
No, it is ridiculous the amount of hate messages we've received over the last 4 or 5 years.
Really?
From people who they want to lecture us about the morality of what we do, or the lack of morality of what we do, or just, throw negative comments at us. And it's incredible that somebody could care so deeply about what we do in our bedroom.
Yeah.
And of course, they would deny that they care, but the fact that they're sending us messages.
Well, most of that comes from we live in a very religious, America, I guess, is a very Christian nation anyways, but we also live in the Bible Belt, the most religious.
Yeah.
And so, but you also,
wow.
You also come from a religious background, though.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that and how you came to non-monogamy or the sex positive world.
Yeah. Just something that Scott said there. I saw a quote which was, "There's no hate like Christian love." Which is like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it's so true. Like, it's just the whole thing of Jesus being like, oh, it's about loving people and not judging people, and only God can judge. And then it's like they're judging you in your comments constantly, just like, it's like.
I want to tell you, before you go into I want to tell you a 60-second story to highlight that exact thing.
Okay, cool.
This past Christmas, me and my very childhood best friend, who is also my cousin, he's a preacher, very against everything that we do. The fact that I'm an atheist, the fact that, we're non-monogamous, all that stuff. He and I will still exchange some messages throughout the year during Alabama University football games, American football games. That's the only time I really communicate with him. At this last exchange toward the end of the season, which was in early December, I said, well, hey, for the first time, since in 8 years, we're going to come to the family Christmas this year, because my mom had kind of talked me into it. She won't go if I don't go. My brother won't go if I don't go. And the reason I hadn't gone is because they're going to be uncomfortable with us. And we didn't want to make their Christmas uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Mom asked, so we're going to go. I sent him some message. Well, hey, it's great chatting with you. I look forward to seeing y'all at the Christmas this year. Looks like my whole family's coming. 3 hours later or so, there was this long delay. He responded back and said, well, I've discussed this with the family, and we have all decided that if you're coming, we're not going to be there. So the Christian love, just decided that, and we just messed about. Well, okay, well, never mind. You guys have your Christmas. We're not here to ruin anything. We won't come.
Oh
So,
my God.
And I'm like, they don't even want to try to save us.
That's exactly it, right? Like if they read the Bible with Jesus hanging around with prostitutes, and like he hung around with these people because you're supposed to be
right
evangelizing and like this saving people, it's just like that's absolute madness. Like it's the opposite of what you should be doing, and it's the opposite of what your God did.
right
It's crazy.
Prostitutes, we do this for free. We have sex with other people and don't get paid for it.
It's insane.
All right, so go ahead. Tell us about your religious.
Yeah. I also did that. Sorry, like this is so cool talking to people who are so similar. I did a post about God supports OnlyFans. Like you just when you said that about, I don't know if you saw it, but because I have loads of saved drafts, and because I don't go out to offend people ever, because I don't like it. Like if I was one-on-one with someone, I would like totally I would change the way I am to suit them because I'm just a nice person. But I'm not going to do things in my own space on my own social media where they can choose to look away. But so I've got a whole load of things with passages from the Bible that I think that they're never taught in Sunday school. Like they would never be taught in a sermon because it's like there's obviously so much incest and slavery and all these things that we know are wrong. But it's like, oh yeah, but it was relevant to the time. And it's like, what? So God, who's omnipotent, omnipresent, and who's the Alpha and the Omega, all these things. It's like, so he didn't know if, a couple of 1,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, that probably slavery wasn't the best idea. And maybe he should write it in that little book. It was like, no, because he was talking to the people at the time. It's like, oh my goodness, like it's madness. But yeah, so the OnlyFans things is God like ordained King David to have 700 concubines, like prostitutes. So he's like, he was ENM, ordained by God. So it's just like he killed Goliath. The guy's cool.
You should put that on your LinkedIn as well, that you're ordained by God.
Yeah. What I do is ordained by God. Oh God. So
to add.
Yeah. Yeah. So my background is, I guess I was brought up in a Baptist church. I just very typical. I guess there's no such thing actually as typical, but for me, it was like, it's not anything super extreme. Like I went to some sort of summer camp type things where it's like very, very happy clappy, like the very American, I'd call it. And in fact, like the Hillsong and those sorts of people, they would fly over the worship leaders to go to these camps and whatever. So that was my upbringing, and just loads of no sex before marriage, sexual shame, masturbation's wrong, just all of these like quite troublesome, or what's the word? I did a post or a story about this week, but just how very unnatural for mammals or humans to just be being celibate and priests being celibate, like it's not the natural form, and the potential issues that can lead to. And I liken it to when people go, kids, like no sweets, or you live in a household where you can't sleep over at your friend's house and you can never drink alcohol and blah, blah, blah. And then people go to university or college, you guys call it, and then they just become massive alcoholic slags. It's just, they'll just bang anyone and they'll just drink anything. And it's this whole thing of like, whereas, in the UK, we're close to France and they've got this much more cultured view, like, oh, you can have a sip of wine, you can have some alcohol, and they don't have binge drinking like we do here in the UK. So it's just stuff like that. For me, I don't think I necessarily ever went off the rails, because it wasn't, I didn't grow up in a sex positive household. Everything was very, you didn't talk about that stuff. It was just so, and this is another thing that I wanted to start a sex podcast in terms of, because I feel like lots of sex educators are typically women talking to women, and which is fantastic. But then there's this whole thing of like, well, where are young men getting their information from? Like, no young man's going to listen to a podcast, which can come across as a bit man-hating sometimes, even accidentally, because they're like, oh, men can't find the clit, so this is what we should do. And it's just like, oh, guess what? Women are bad at giving head too, sometimes, often.
Yeah.
So I actually did it.
Use your teeth.
Yeah. So I wanted to do this, but I didn't, because of the hate that typically male educators get from just a female sex educator. It's like very much pro. It's like, this is great. It's empowering to women. Women should be able to talk about masturbation. Whereas if I'm like talking about, I do a podcast talking about masturbation or sex toys, it's like, you're a creep. You're like it is, and I even am that way. I'm biased. If I see a guy talking about that stuff, it can feel like you're a bit weird, I think. Even though I am that person, I love talking about sex. I love talking about how to have great sexual health and relationships.
Real quick, when we were planning our retreat at Hedonism, I was intentionally looking for a man to bring in to talk to men about their sexual health and performance, and could not find one.
Was it the sex positive? We were talking about your religious background. Was it the sex?
How you came to E&M?
Was sex your avenue out of religion, or was it something else?
No, it was no. Lots of it never sat right with me, I don't think. Maybe it was the beginnings of a critical mindset. I don't know, because I haven't been a great philosophical critical thinker, because I do think a lot of religion is just indoctrination. You've always known it. You don't question stuff. You're not taught to question stuff. And even when I didn't necessarily identify as a Christian anymore, I still wasn't openly sex positive. I was a very sexual being in my relationships, but I wasn't E&M. Yeah, it wasn't part of my life. And then it was actually just, it was only probably 5 years ago that I had my first open relationship. And then, and even then, to me, it was like, I've struck gold. I found a girl I love and who loves me so much, she'll let me. And I still thought it was wrong. Like, I still thought it was something to hide. It was just like, oh, I've somehow managed to trick her. Like, it wasn't a manipulation thing. She was the one who said, but I was like, this isn't normal. I shouldn't be allowed this. I'm literally having my cake and eating it. And how I met my partner now was actually, we got together as a three, and then we were all friends, and then that relationship sadly ended. But I'm now with my partner. So we started open, and it's been then just this progressive journey of learning about, oh, there's other people like us. When you have this great, supportive, transparent, honest, communicative relationship, you can flourish, and you're not a weirdo, and you're not immoral.
But it's so difficult. It's so difficult to explain that to somebody that has no interest in consensual non-monogamy, because you say all of that, and the person hearing you is just hearing, yeah, you just want to fuck people. But for us, especially the longer we've been in it, the more it has become very connection centered. It's not, sex is a part of it. Yeah. But it's not really the driving force for us anymore. It's like these deep, almost spiritual connections with other people that you were never allowed to have in your monogamous, paradigm that you lived in before. Yeah. So we have these phenomenal friends and deep connections with them. Sex is just sort of a byproduct of that connection.
It's so like I've already said it this podcast, but it is crazy talk. It's like talking to a mirror, as it were. It's
just like a better looking version.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is a good. I need glasses to look all have intellect.
I told you, I said you have a lot of the similar thought processes.
Yeah, it is that spiritual thing of. Because we are very much the same, of like, sex is just such a small, people sort of say to me, oh, you're such a lucky guy. Sort of having multiple partners, not just like being able to sleep with more people, go to a party where you sleep with someone else's partner, like actually having more than one partner myself. And I'm like, how much effort do you put into your relationship? And like how many dramas do you have, and how much whatever? I was like, now imagine that times two. Like you it's not just more sex. Like I'm not someone. I was talking about King David on my Instagram live last night. I was like, imagine having 700 prostitutes to satisfy. I'm like, I'm not man enough. That's not possible. I've not got that sex drive. And I think when I've posted about our sex life, people are like, God, that's crazy. But in terms of the sex part of it, it's like, that's only a very small part of life, even. Like, it's such an important part. But in terms of, you've then got the other 20 hours a day of talking and being with someone and being in a relationship and listening to their troubles and putting up with their bad moods. And like, I don't feel like I'm having my cake and eating it at all in terms of relationships necessarily. Being able to have fun and have these spiritual connections, it's like, for me, that's some people, I think, in the swinging world here, because I think there is definitely differences if you're just people who just go to a party or go to a swingers club and then maybe just have sex with someone, and people often build connection, but sometimes it is just a physical thing for them. And I feel like the poly world and the E&M world, it does become these things of like, you'll literally become best friends with people. And just because you are sex positive and we'll just use the word horny, it's a word that's filled with so many, I think, negative connotations often of just like you said, oh, you just want to fuck people. But it's like, actually, you just love, and like, I'm very a tactile person. I love hugging people, but like, I'm completely straight, which is a bad thing. Two of my partners are like, why can't you just be bi? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry the way I am. So I'm like, I'm working on it. Like, I need some bibliotherapy to like put some demons in me.
You don't have the bad demon.
Yeah.
So when you said
about those people that say, you're having your cake and eating it too, or you just want to fuck people, I feel like they're not critical thinkers, number one, but they feel somehow challenged that you're living with so much freedom in your life.
Yeah.
That it offends them. Like, they take like a personal like offense, like, how dare you live with so much freedom? To them, it does look like you're having your cake and eating it too, because they're either under religious oppression or traditional oppression, whatever it is, they're not able to have that.
And you can almost sense that some of those people are just sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting for it to all implode for you in your life.
So true.
I mean, they're going to be so happy. Like if mine and her relationship were to falter, there's so many people who'd be like, I knew it. I knew that would happen. I mean, how did they ever think there was any other possible outcome to this?
I think that is something I've found this for 10 plus years, just on my Instagram account, is projection is just this biggest thing. Like, whenever I mentor any of our graduates and students, the first time they get a troll or someone pushing back on their content or whatever, and just getting angry with them for saying something, I sort of say to them, look, there's lots of jealousy. There's lots of people who will just project their own insecurities onto you. You just have to feel sorry for them. Like, there's nothing more really to say. It's like, if you're attacking a random stranger on the internet, there's a deficit in your own life. And once you know that, you can then just carry on living, happy with your life, and actually feeling sorry for them. You're not taking the mickey out of them because they don't have a great life. You're going, I wish you had what I had, and I'd love to help you. So, coming in from that, like, kill them with kindness and stuff. I get it that one of the biggest things of like, polyamorous or E&M or whatever relationships, they never end well. And it's like, let's look at the stats on divorce, shall we? In monogamous relationships, it's like nothing, but like, relationships are hard. It's like nothing is working the world over. But actually, probably if we had good research, which we don't, on the outcomes of E&M, like, we have great actually research around sexual health and E&M, and people or will often criticize, oh, well, have fun with all your sexual diseases. And I'm like, well, let's be evidence-based about this, shall we? Let's look at what the research says. Oh, look, people in E&M relationships are categorically much more stringent with testing. They are much more careful. And, if you look at the data and you extrapolate it, you go, well, there's far more testing, and there's, with fewer people, there's the same amount, if not less, STIs within ethically non-monogamous communities than there are in secular, which is obvious because very often people who cheat are not going to be the ones who are like, oh, I'm going to go and get tested, or I'm going to double check. I'm going to have these open and honest communications of, look, if we're going to have sex, I want to use protection, or can we do testing and share that before we meet? Because I've got other partners to protect who know we're going to have sex, and they've told me that you need to send that. So it's like, it's obvious, like it's confirmation bias for me that the research says this, but it's just obvious. Of course, in communities where we're having sex more, we're going to care more about not getting those diseases. The other side of it is I was so ashamed, like buying condoms. You're like, oh, this is awkward. Or going to a sexual health clinic. It's like you're some sort of disease infested human. It's just a virus. Like it's just a virus that you've caught from someone else. If you catch a cough, that's a virus and you've caught from another human being. The only reason to be ashamed about having, if you do unfortunately happen to contract an STI, is there's no shame unless you think the act of having sex was dirty.
Right.
So that's where it all stems from. Do you believe sex is a dirty act? No. Okay. So what's wrong with having an STI? It's unfortunate. I didn't want to give it to you. I didn't want to get it from you. But if we had been just chatting and you coughed in my presence, I mean, I didn't even consent to you coughing on me. I consented to you putting your mouth on me in the bedroom. But it's this whole thing of there's just so much shame but it all stems from one area. And I think people often, even if they're not active churchgoers or religious people of whatever religion, they have this shame. And it's like, where's this coming from? You don't have any beliefs that support this weird shame cycle that you're in.
That's part of our goal. One of our goals in the podcast is just, we feel like we're just normal people. I mean, we have some abnormal hobbies, but we're not some super rich people. We're not some super influential people. We're just normal. And having these types of conversations makes it easier for other people to have these types of conversations, and hopefully that ball can keep rolling. And because it's incredibly awkward. It's not in our community to have conversations about sex. That's not awkward. People in open relationships of some stripe have no problems talking about this stuff. But you try to go to dinner with somebody that's a little more traditional and have a sexual conversation, and often it's just going to get shut down quickly because you can feel the tension around the table, and it shouldn't be that way. We really thought once we got outed that now all of our vanilla friends would be pelting us with questions about it. And we're like, all right, we gotta dig in. We gotta be ready.
Because that's how we would be. We'd be like, tell us everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody asked us any questions.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, so everybody's so uncomfortable with this topic that they're not even gonna. I mean, this was set up. It was teed up for them to have the most interesting conversation with these two people who are now publicly identified sexual freaks.
Yeah.
They won't even ask us a question about it. That's how awkward the topic or uncomfortable that topic can be for people.
Wow, that's weird. Like I said, when I started my account, it was all of my questions. Like, again, lots of these people are kind of online friends and graduates of my courses and around the world who, lots of them messaged and said, well, what was really amazing actually when I went public with it all is the number of people who were like, oh my God, me and my husband, me and my partner, me and my boyfriend, me and my girlfriend, we're E&M, we're poly, we're swingers, we're whatever, we're in an open relationship, but we don't tell anyone. But then they're telling me in my DMs. And it was a lot of people. Like, I don't want to sort of say it's most people on my new account, because people will go scrolling through the followers and going, oh my goodness, I know her, she's E&M. But it is funny that it's so sad. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this or it's just I think it probably is big in America, but here you lose your job for discussing any of this. Like, even if you're just, it's nothing to do with your job. You just can't be this way. Like, if you're single and you're a slut, an unethical slut, there's a good book recommendation for, I'm not a book reader, but have you heard this, the ethical slut? Have you seen it? Yeah. But if you're an unethical slut,
that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah. But if you're in a committed, honest, moral, ethical relationship, marriage, you can't sleep with other people. And if we find out, we'll fire you.
Yeah, that happens here in America. We lost half of our commercial business clientele because some of them were so afraid to use our business because they would be associated and could possibly be fired.
Yeah, we owned a gym, so people started asking our members, "Oh, you go to that swinger gym now?" Those were completely separate. Our online naughty gym,
totally vanilla. I mean, we had clients that we had for years, and we had to be like, how does the service we are providing now change from the service I provided yesterday? I still don't want to sleep.
Wow.
I'm like,
yeah. Now that it's public, I'm now not going to sit in your face whilst you're dead. Well, you're bench pressing. Like, it's not.
Yeah, but we have had, like you, just hundreds of people reach out to us in our community who will be like, tell us more, or we're in this kind of relationship. But when we see them in public, they do not speak to us, because they're like associated with that type of lifestyle in public.
People will want to ask questions, and if they want to do it face to face, which is less often, mostly they want to ask questions online so they can hide behind the computer. But if they do meet with us, there's usually like, well, can we come to your house, or y'all come to our house, or we'll go someplace private? Because anybody that gets seen out in public with us now runs the risk of being labeled as a potential non-monogamist.
But that's so weird, isn't it? Like, I don't think I'm, maybe because you live in a community and I don't really, so it's maybe different for me. But that, I find that wild, that it's like, that's kind of like going, if you were gay, it's like, oh, you're hanging out with that person, you must be gay too. It's like, it's not, these things aren't contagious, or these things aren't like, you can be friends with like, it's like hanging out with a Christian. It's like, that doesn't make me a Christian. You don't have to, it's just like, they've got their beliefs, they've got the way they live their life. I think, again, it's just people boxing people, right? It's like, oh, that's all you're about. That's all you are as human beings. You're either a raver, or you're a sex predator, or you're a, whatever, a Christian, or just.
We sold our commercial business a few weeks ago, and one of our sent us a message and said, I just got a message from somebody, and they said, so now that Scott and April sold their gym, what are they just going to swing full time? I'm like,
I want that fit.
If only.
I understand what.
I'm going to have to get in a lot better shape than I am now.
Yeah. If you're going to start charging people the world over for, sheesh.
But
it would be a cool job.
It's a lack of education, and that's one of the reasons why we love what you do. Is you're a great educator.
Thanks.
You're in a polyamorous relationship, correct?
Yeah.
And that's been the type of consensual non-monogamy you've explored since the beginning of opening a relationship?
No. So I probably didn't identify. It's a funny word these days, isn't it? I didn't identify or sort of call myself poly until maybe 2 years ago, I'd say. Yeah, because I guess I didn't have more than one committed relationship. I didn't call more than one person a girlfriend. Like, I really don't like many labels, because I just think people will have referred to me as a dom, and I really don't like it, because people instantly have a connotation of like, what is a dom? It's like, oh, so you love beating people or using. Yeah, that's the box. Exactly. It's just like, oh, well, if you're a dom, that means you like to it's kind of like BDSM. All people think of is leather, chains, whips. It's like they don't realize that actually it's a massive overarching. There's lots of psychology to it, as well as the physical and the sexual, etc. So yeah, I guess initially I was just E&M, open relationships, and then about 2 years ago it was like, oh, and I kind of have always known I could definitely love more than one person. So my sort of primary partner, Alex, who I live with, I used to think everyone was non-monogamous. I was like, everyone would be if they could be. I didn't think that. I was just like blasé, but being a deep thinker, thinking about it all the time, meeting people, just building this idea. And like, to be honest, it cemented it when I met her, because I'm like, do what you want. I'm not going to control you. I want you to live your life to the full. I would even be turned on if you had relationships with or like had sex with other people. She's like, no, I'm not interested. And so that's the biggest hate I probably get at the minute, is people going, so she's monogamous and you're poly. That must be so horrible for her. Is she just sad all the time? Is she? And I mentioned that because we both suffer from jealousy occasionally. And I'm like, jealousies are totally normal. Like, sex doesn't have to be involved for jealousy. Like, if she goes out for drinks with her female straight friend, I'm like, I'm jealous. Like, they're having so much fun. Or like, just these little things with just as humans, you're like, oh, I'm jealous that her work's taking her off to that country to do this. Like, it's normal. And it's just like all feelings, just treat them as visitors, just welcome them in, feel the feelings, and then just let them go, sort of thing. And think about what's triggered you to be that way. But people are just saying to me, I think that's really unethical that you go and do this and she doesn't. And I'm like, that's her choice. She can do whatever she wants. It's kind of like I've somehow tricked her into, because there are toxic relationships. Like, for instance, I'll tell you a story. I posted a picture. So to talk about my dynamics, let's say with Alex, and I follow another good account of their whole account is about their Dom sub relationship. So they call themselves in their bio 24/7 DS, maybe something like that. But essentially, because some people are just like, okay, I'm the dominant one in the bedroom and he or she is the submissive one, but we're equals in our life. Whereas our relationship, the way we've set it up, is very much she's 24/7 submissive and I'm 24/7 dominant. And for instance, I even have to, she's like, what shall I wear? And I'm like, oh, either of those looks good. And she's like, I want you to have a preference. I want you to tell me what to wear. And like, even to the point where I'm like, she's like, can I wear this? And I'm like, oh, you look smoking hot. She's like, so you want me going out looking smoking hot so other people look at me? And I'm like,
yes.
No, I don't. I would hate that. And she's like, good. I'm like, you should cover up. And she's like, oh, that's turned me on. And I'm like, oh my God, you're so toxic. Like you want me to be. She's like, look, I want to be in a 1950s marriage where I do as I'm told. It's funny because it's like, I'm so not controlling and I'm so like, I want her to have the best life. But then, so I do change the way I act for her. I'm like, you should wear this. And so I said something like, I didn't let her, this is about another partner, but I said, I didn't let her dye her hair a different color or something like that. And I got hate for that. Ooh. And then and I'll tell you about the specific instance. There was another one where I posted a picture of Alex. I posted a picture of 3 partners. And I knew that Alex didn't like that picture of herself. And I posted it on purpose, one, because we had discussed the picture. She looks amazing. And I was like, you need to stop talking badly about yourself. That's one of our rules. You can't talk badly about your body. And I'm going to post this because other people will say amazing things about you. And I want you to hear people speaking good things about you who don't have any, I'm going to say, oh, you're hot because I want to sleep with you. I have to say it. Whereas if other people who don't, you'll get the message. Anyway, so I posted it. She then WhatsApps me. I can't believe you posted that photo. I hate it, whatever. Anyway, someone messages and I posted screenshots of that on my story. someone messages, "This is disgusting. How about you just ask her in future before posting it, if she likes it or not?" So I was in one of those moods and I replied, "Oh, you're mistaken that I actually care what she thinks. I don't." And then I was like, "Oh God, that's too far." So I was like,
But it's
"No."
but
Yeah, but I was like, "No, seriously, we have a really communicative relationship." Anyway, she came back and well, after we'd been talking, she was like, "I'm really sorry. I'm in an abusive relationship." And my partner, because I said to her, "Look, don't be such a thicko that you know me, you follow my account. I'm the most communicative, empathetic, amazing partner. Can't, while saying nice, but I'm just like,
humble
I
partner.
could, yeah, I'm just like, you can quite clearly see we have this amazing dynamic where we talk about everything and there's so much respect. Don't be stupid. And she just basically goes, "I'm so sorry. Like, I'm in an abusive relationship. He wouldn't care less about posting a picture or sending a picture without asking me. He doesn't care." And I was like, "I'm really sorry," talking. She was just like, "Yeah, do you know what? I was just projecting on you." And I was like, "I don't judge you. Thanks so much for like taking my sort of dry sense of humor well." But it is just this thing of projection of that people can't get past. They can't see, they see abuse, like they see that any of these things. And this is why I do struggle a bit when I'm talking about our dynamics, like say mine and Alex's, because people, the polyamorous side of it, the BDSM or dom sub dynamic, people just see it as, "Oh, so you like to hit women?" And I'm like, "I actually don't, but they beg for it." Like, it's just like, I'm like, because one of my partners, she just loves pain. I posted about on my story, just like, and I hate pain. I'm such a baby.
And even you saying that, if you tell somebody, no, they beg for it, even perpetuates you looking like some controlling person. Of course, you would say that they're begging for it.
Yeah. You can't win, and it is one of those things. I can't remember. I think The Rock's daughter called herself something different. She's become a wrestler, and she got so much hate for not using the Rock name. And she came out and said, "If I called myself so and so, The Rock, so whatever, you'd all say I was piggybacking off my father's success. Because I've chosen not to, you're choosing to insult me, that I'm dishonoring him. I can't please everyone, so I'm just going to do what makes me happy." So same with life. It's same with relationships. I'm going to be in a poly relationship. Great. They might end. Like I have actually recently, and I haven't told my Instagram following this. I get DMs all the time. I often just use their initials. So she was N. And people are like, "You haven't posted N recently. Is everything okay? How's N? Is it just you and A and T at the minute? Where's J?" Like, whatever. And I haven't told them, but we have sort of decided mutually to go our separate ways. But we still very much have so much love for each other. And it's another thing about polyamory and E&M that I have found, that I am with at least 2 or 3 of my ex-partners, I'm like best friends with them. And we don't sleep together because one of them is now in a monogamous relationship, but we're still best friends. But I don't personally see that happening a great deal in monogamous relationships, like, because it's that thing of, and I get it. I get, if you're monogamous, you fucked that person, you've been intimate with them, they've done this to you, they've done that to you. Like, it's hard. Whereas when you're kind of used to that, that's not what makes a relationship. That's not what makes us special.
It is the sex is a result of all the great things about the relationship. It's not what makes necessarily the relationship great.
Yeah. So yeah, I've kind of spoken loads about I didn't really answer your question about polyamory, but I think I did a bit.
Yeah.
Well, and our relationship has evolved, and I hesitate to use that word because it almost sounds like it's synonymous with improved, and I don't mean it that way. But
Yeah.
we started out it's very fluid, and we've talked about and experimented with separate dating recently, and we've thrown about the word polyamorous. So whereas 7-8 years ago when we first started, those would have been deal breakers. This is ended. We're not doing this anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But as you expose yourself to more and more, or a greater diversity of different ways of thinking and different relationship forms and styles, and you meet people that are engaged in it, all of a sudden the scary demons don't seem so scary anymore. And our relationship has been so rock solid from the beginning that it has served as a platform or a solid foundation to experiment with other things. Mm-hmm. And, if we find out that wasn't really something we enjoyed, we just come back to each other. And that was
do you think the reason that's happened, I'm kind of using a word, maybe putting in your mouth, but like, because I hear a lot of people saying that of like, there was sex, but you can't go, like some people in the swingers world would be like, you can't kiss someone. You can do the physical, but there's no kissing. You can't do texting. Like some of my, probably people I'm closest with in swingers world, they don't do texting outside. It's like we meet to arrange, but there's not like
communication,
flirty texting and communication. And so I just feel like what you were saying there is like it sounds like you were like, look, that would have been a deal breaker, but now it's not. And for me, it's just like it comes back to trust and the strength of the relationship, and then that removing fear. Like you don't think that Scott or April going on a separate date is I'm losing them. You just lose that fear. So it's like, I'm comfortable with exploring that, and can we keep communicating about it? I'm just interested how you got from no to let's try it.
I think it is just continual communication, and it does build trust and remove that fear. Because I think that for me, at least, it was that fear. Like, we've got something so great. We've got such a great relationship. What if this messes it up? What if we take another step further and it messes it up? But we both feel we're capable of loving other people without fear of losing what we have.
Yeah, so, it even feels like the closer we get to another person, the closer we end up getting to each other. It's almost like you continually are learning how to love and connect better with people. The longer, or at least for us, the longer we've been in this, the better I've gotten. I grew up in a not a touchy-feely household. Like I never saw my parents kiss, not once that I remember.
Wow.
We didn't hug a lot. My family really didn't do that stuff, and so I had to, that was kind of a hurdle that. Especially as we've been in this relationship now, I'm a huge hugger, and I love to touch and pet and being, physical with people. Sometimes I don't ask for consent, so I've got to work on that. But,
yes, you do.
I mean, the hugs and things, but the more we are able to play around with the type of life we want to lead, the better I seem to get at relating to her, even if that new thing we're trying doesn't directly involve her, it benefits her, and the things that she's doing benefit me.
Yeah. There's when I first started identifying as poly and had a sort of second girlfriend, as it were, that's probably the biggest period of growth. And that's when with Alex, I was like, I want to be with you forever. Like if I wanted to get married, which I don't, that would have been like, I'm going to propose. Like in that year when I first got there, it was just like our love, or my love for her at least, just went through the roof. And it mimics, like in terms of what you say there, like even just that new experience. And it is something for me, and I don't know what it is. It's just the communication and the conversations you end up having, or something. Just like last night, we had a really sort of tough conversation, or like an in-depth talking about boundaries and stuff like that with a new person I'm seeing. And we were just like talking, and then but like really serious. Like I started the conversation with, can I have a conversation with you that's just a safe conversation? And like not react. And because we're quite jokey, sometimes you might say something and then they'll go, oh, so you don't love me, or, like a joke, whatever. Yeah. Whereas but we don't do that if it's like, can we have a safe conversation? But then, so we're having quite a difficult conversation, and it wasn't actually particularly pleasant. And then I kissed her, and then my hands sort of went down like that. And then she started laughing. I was like, why are you laughing? And she was like, you just love talking, don't you? You're horny, and we were just in a bad place. And I'm like, I like deep connection. And I was just like, it was just that thing of like, it felt safe. We were able to like be vulnerable
Yeah.
And then we kissed, and then I'm like, of course I want to have sex with you. I'm just like, that's just how this works, isn't it? But it's like, I feel like normally you'd be like, oh, we just have a bit of downtime, separation. I'm like, no, I want to be in you. We've just had a fight.
Yeah. So coming back to your nutrition expertise, what are your thoughts on the use of diet soda?
Oh God.
I actually listened to one of your podcasts when you talk about it, but Scott is Diet Dr. Pepper drinker, like a 2-liter plus a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I know it's not a good thing. All right? I'm unaware.
And what are your feelings towards diet drinks, April? Before
I think they're okay in some instances. I think when it becomes like an addiction, and you're choosing that over like water, I think excessive is too much. Mostly my concern is like the additives and the fake sugars and stuff like that.
I should point out that Diet Dr. Pepper is like 98% water.
Yeah. Well, so this is the thing, right? So I hate the taste of water for a start. So I guess you could call that a conflict of interest. Like I constantly drink flavored stuff. So this is just like a sugar-free sports drink. It's just water, flavorings, artificial sweeteners. I'm a big white Monster. Do you know Monster Ultra, the white cans? Just like, I hate coffee. I wish I loved coffee because it's more cultured and it has great health, benefits related to it, and the sort of prebiotic fibers and all these cool things, but I just hate it. So instead of having a coffee in the morning, I have a can of Monster. And I get a lot of grief for it. And you kind of look like you're a degenerate, but drinking a can, it's like you're drinking a can of beer or Stella or like, it's just like walking down the street. It's like, oh, look at that person. He's a scumbag. So
do you ever nutrition?
Yeah, exactly. But so long story short is artificially sweetened drinks, diet sodas, as you call them, the research doesn't support any major negative health benefits. Or health effects. So there's, Scott, I'm on your side again. When it's caffeinated, I don't actually know if Dr. Pepper, so obviously Diet Coke is caffeinated. So there is a small level of dependence that can be created. If we want to use the word addiction, there is a physiological dependence that can be created. But the problem is most people who go, you shouldn't drink Diet Coke, are completely and utterly addicted to coffee. So they're just hypocrites. Like, caffeine, yes, can cause this downregulation of your adenosine receptors, etc. But we're not really discussing that. What we're discussing is artificial sweeteners, which is the things that cause the sweet taste, not the alertness. And the research just doesn't show that there's any negative health effects of those. Like, something might come out that we see it changing our gut microbiota, and somehow we see that that's changing our health status somehow. People talking about you drink artificial sweetened drinks and it causes an insulin spike. That's not true. Like, you'd die if that happened. It's just dumb people saying words that they think they understand when they don't. So there's also the teeth health thing. That's the only thing I will say, teeth health, but it's all of these sort of acidic drinks. But again, brush your teeth, use Sensodyne, whatever. So
case then.
Get off his case.
Thanks, Martin. That alone is worth this podcast happening. All right. How does nutrition in general, big picture stuff here, not nitty gritty, but how does nutrition play into sexual health, sexual performance, libido, or erectile? Look, I'm throwing a lot of things, and there can be a million answers to this. But
cool.
If people are saying, look, I'm going to eat the way I want to eat, that's fine. Sometimes how it affects you in the bedroom can be one of the most motivating things you could possibly do, especially if you're in a relationship and you're about to try a date with a new partner. You want to perform well. So how does nutrition in that area affect sexual performance. There's a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
So nutrition and sexual health do have a huge interplay, and I'm going to just stick nutrition and exercise in the same bracket here, and I'll talk about when they're different. But to talk about that, in terms of finding someone's why, and when we talk about behavior change, which for me is just this massive area that our graduates, or our students, talk to them about, is finding someone's why and the behavior change aspect of that, because and the kind of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivations and the different outcomes you get from them. To use myself as an example, I don't particularly like exercise. I don't particularly like the gym anymore. I certainly don't like any cardiovascular exercise, at least not outside of the bedroom. And I honestly say I'm like, that's the only reason I'm somewhat healthy, is my heart rate working then. But one of the things for me is like, in the bedroom, like plasma volume. So the volume of your blood, which, coming back to your point there about, erectile dysfunction or erection strength and these sorts of things, it plays a huge role in terms of your cardiovascular health, your whole cardiovascular system, like the penis being this thing that functions based on blood flow, and the drugs that you can take are functioning based on getting more blood to that area. Well, the side effect of exercise, aerobic exercise, is increased plasma volume. So for me, when I go running, it's like, oh, you're looking after your heart. And I'm like, no, I'm looking after my penis. Like, that's what's going through my head. Nothing to do with, oh, might live an extra year. It's so abstract to me that it's not a good why and not a good motivator. Whereas, how am I going to enjoy my hobbies, my hobby being sex? That's going to be a big factor. And exercise is so powerful in terms of libido, like you just said there. The stress reduction sort of after exercise, the impact of that, the endorphins, etc. But lots of it is this overarching thing: nutrition and exercise. Libido is hugely dampened by poor health status. So the more you can do things like resistance exercise and cardio, and the eating well, like, oh, what's the point in eating vegetables? I don't get the point. They don't taste nice. But actually, lots of the bioactive compounds that we actually don't understand very well can be hugely beneficial. So for instance, in the performance nutrition world, people talk about beetroot and the nitrates in beetroot and the impact that can have on VO2 max. And that's something that actually might be helpful for individuals, because the beetroot research came for the cardiovascular disease research initially in terms of vasodilation. So it's like, cool, more blood flow. So if there's ever a reason to eat your spinach and eat your beetroot, it's for that reason, improving your sex life, not necessarily, my aorta is going to be happy with me today. It's like, no, you're sort of
actually have a non-stim beetroot pre-workout that we may need to try before sex.
Well, yeah, like, and that. So I'm talking about chronic, but there are these acute things that people do talk about, and it's there's quite a famous ex-porn star who's become very big on social media, and I think he does talk about some good stuff, but he also goes outside of his lane a lot. And when he touches on nutrition, so he talks about like a boner shake. So he's like, yeah, the night before I do a scene, I drink a boner shake. And he's like, and I can't, it's like egg whites and whey protein. And he talks about all these things. And he's like, this is guaranteed. And it's not evidence-based. Like it's silly. Yeah. There's nothing magical about those foods. But when I say magical, I'm talking about beetroot. There's something magical. There's something unique about potentially consuming that food. There's nothing magical about your boner after having a scoop of whey protein, unfortunately. But
that's a genius idea. We should have used that as a product to sell on Naughty.
Yeah, boner shake.
Boner shake. God, that's brilliant.
The other one that's a fad, which I actually looked into the research because I was like, I am interested. I don't just go, that's bullshit, ignore it. Like I look into it. Another one was about size of loads, and sometimes like lots of women in the research, when they do surveys, correlate the size of load with sexual attraction and satisfaction, how much they've satisfied their man. So unfortunately, that's not true. As a man, you don't necessarily have a bigger load because you love or fancy whatever the girl more. But as a man, I'm like, I want to be better for you. So it's like, that's a selling point. So it's like, cool. So celery is the one everyone's like, eat loads of celery and it gives you bigger loads. So he's telling that that's also not particularly true. But there are things in terms of your overarching question, like adequate protein intake is important. Like, it's like, you don't have to want to be a bodybuilder or be jacked or these things to, like, eating enough protein is going to benefit lots of boring health things in your immune system, but actually it's going to provide, a stimulus for whole body protein synthesis, building and repairing these things like essential fat intake. We know that fat is a building block for our sex steroid hormones. So again, if you eat a very, very, very low fat diet, actually we see in men and women big reductions in those sex steroid hormones. And it's one thing that I talk to people, I talk about within nutrition, coaching to diet or coaching to live, and also about setting expectations for your client. I want to lose weight because it will make me happy is not a good reason, because it's not body weight that is really a good indicator of happiness. Likewise, I want to lose weight so I look different, so I can get a partner because I want to have sex, is no good is if you're dieting and you have no sex drive and you have no social life. It doesn't, the things people forget and they don't marry up. They're like, oh, look at this six pack. And it's like, cool, can you get it up? Not in a lifetime. And it's like, talk to anyone who's done a photo shoot or like competed in bodybuilding. It's like, you have zero sex drive. So the interplay is massive between these things.
That's interesting. I didn't know this. So the bodybuilding community in general suffers from libido typically?
Yes, obviously talking about natural. So when you start using exogenous hormones, which is very common within because it's one of those sports which is quite nice where you get the choice. Like, you compete in 100-meter sprinting and most people are taking steroids, but there's a few people who are playing by the rules and not. Whereas bodybuilding, you get to choose a federation, natural or untested, which means take all the drugs you can. But in that world, you're obviously, because testosterone massively drops in a calorie deficit and at low body fat levels, probably the main signaler is body fat levels. As they come down, you get below kind of your body's settling point within a range. We start to leptin and kind of these master regulator hormones come down. And so libido just goes down massively. So unless you're injecting those things back into you, you're screwed, or you're not screwed. You're screwed, but you're not getting screwed, sadly.
Well, yeah, it's a fascinating and in-depth topic that can't be covered in 5 minutes. But
yeah,
suffice it to say, for all of you people who find sex an enjoyable or important part of your life, you have to make an effort to lift a little bit of weight, move a little bit more, and eat a little bit better. And it's going to have a huge impact on anything associated with bedroom time.
Mm-hmm.
And
and those positive habits, it's also what it just does to your view of yourself. Sometimes it's not. This is why I say about weight. I see so many people who just moving in the right direction because they're looking after themselves and giving themselves that space and that time, and just even like, oh, I just ate a bit better. I didn't cut out any foods, but I lost a bit of weight. It wasn't the movement on the scales. I just feel better in myself. And now I'm more confident, and everyone knows confidence is sexy. And it's just like, that's such a nice outcome of just all those things you just described.
Yeah, we've seen that so many times just in our coaching alone, where we have a client that works out 3 days in a week and comes back the next week and said, oh, I'm so excited. I can tell I look so much better in my clothes. And I'm like, nah, you probably don't. But that's your brain's way of rewarding you for this positive thing you've started.
Yeah.
And we trick ourselves into, and it works in reverse. You've been working out for 6 months consistently. Yeah. And then you skip a week and you think, oh my God, I look so bloated and awful. And then not a person on earth could tell the difference.
I've never said that. I feel attacked.
That's me right now. I'm like, I have not been going to the gym for months. I'm just like, I'm just a waste of space. And then genetically I'm all right, but it's just, yeah, I get that. I'm the same.
You bring up genetics. I did raise a question. Is there truth to, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear an expert say it. Is there truth to, for some people, genetically, it is just far more difficult for them to lose weight? Like, for instance, you'll see some people whose bodies shape, where they store fat is in very specific areas. Some people it distributes evenly. With April, you cannot tell. If she puts on 15 pounds, you just can't tell it spreads so evenly.
Yeah.
With other people, it goes to butt cheeks or hips directly. Are there genetic markers that prevent people or make it very difficult for some people to stay lean?
Yes. So when I talk about settling point, this is what we're really talking about in terms of we're all on this spectrum. And what I will say is that we can have say our settling point is here at this percentage body fat, for instance. Our body likes to be within there. We can go away on holiday, don't exercise, all you can eat resort, and we maybe go up to this end of the spectrum. Then we come back, get back into work in a normal routine, and we move back down to here. But it's so hard for you to get outside of here. If over a period of many, many years, inactivity, stress, maybe you go through a breakup or some grief, and you're using food to medicate, and you go up here. So your settling point might shift like this. Very, very difficult to shift it this way, unfortunately. Maybe something to do with evolutionary biology. We don't really know, but it makes sense. So you can sort of shift this up here, which is unfortunate, where sort of prevention is better than cure, but you still have this range here. And the other thing is, it might shift up here. You can still get to here, but you'll have to have major lifestyle modification. You'd have to become extremely active day to day. You would have to make continual effort around your nutrition. So it is possible. On top of this, so you probably have heard of like metabolic adaptation, and so different metabolisms will adapt to different levels. So the magnitude of that adaptation will change a lot. So everyone can lose weight. So this crap about I'm carb intolerant, I can't eat carbs. So we've got different propensities to eat different things or feel different ways when we eat things, but no one can't lose weight. But when you come back to what really matters, what we eat and an appetite driving that, if someone's eating ad libitum, to pleasure, and this is the only gene we can measure. There are genes, there's loads of them, and we've got correlations around different genes, but none of them are particularly powerful. And DNA testing doesn't really work. But we know one gene called the FTO gene, which you can get tested for, but it's not very helpful to get tested for, because when you've got this double allele of the FTO gene, that means you'll typically have a higher BMI than someone who doesn't. You'll have a greater appetite than someone else, and you'll struggle to lose weight. And you go, thanks for telling me all the things I already know, because I live as this human being. What the fuck should I do about it? And that gene testing company will go, eat less and exercise more. Like we can't do anything more than that. So all of the principles that I'm sure you guys teach about eating a bit better and exercising a bit more, no one's going to benefit from going and getting their genes tested to go, oh, I'm a carb burner, I'm a fat burner. The research has clearly shown this. And I think one day, maybe we might be able to. But I started studying this, like I've got a paper published in experimental physiology in the area of genetics. And I was like interviewing like leading Cambridge geneticists, and they were like 20, 30 years, we might be able to. We're now, say, 14 years on, and I'm now saying 20, 30 years probably. Like in that whole time, nothing has improved. Like we don't know anything more than we did when I first looked at it. And I think with AI, the world's going to change super fast. Yeah. And so maybe we will know. But right now, yes, Scott, to answer your question super quickly, we do have different genetic tendencies towards losing fat, gaining fat. Where we store it, as you rightly said, it's like totally different for different people and very hard. You can't tell your body, lose it off my tummy. annoyingly. And people will find it harder. But the key thing as well is genetics isn't your destiny. I'm really always keen to sort of remind people, genetics loads the trigger, but actually your environment and your habits is what pulls that trigger. So your genetics aren't your destiny. You can make a difference, but also just don't look at a picture of someone else. Don't go, I want to be like April, because it's like, yeah, you can't. Like, you're going to, it's the perfect, isn't it? You gain the fat evenly, whereas someone else gains 5 pounds and it all goes to their tummy, and they're like, that's not fair. And life isn't fair. That's that if we can just go, we're all dealt a hand of cards, play your hand well.
Yeah, it's a hard thing as a coach to tell. Well, I don't know that I've ever directly told a client this, but
yeah,
get those kinds of requests. This is what I want to look like, and you don't want to say you can't probably get there. Now, what you do say is, look, we can make big improvements. It's going to take time. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take a lot of changes in your life. But it's a delicate thing to try to shift somebody's objective, their goal, from this Michelangelo picture of the perfect body, and say, maybe you can get there. I don't know, but some people do have genetic advantages, and that's not to impugn the hard work that people that get these great stage-ready bodies are doing. You have to have that hard work, but it is slightly easier for some people. And for some people, it's just never going to happen to that extreme. In fact, it would probably be unhealthy for some people to even try to get to that.
Yeah.
But it is a very difficult thing to tell people. And after all of this research that we've done, it seems like the answer is still eat your lean protein and vegetables and move a little bit more, and then try to do some resistance training. And there's good and bad ways to do those things, but that's the formula. And
there are different things that on an individual level might benefit that person more than another, which is why it's really great working with a professional. Some people I see I'll get criticized. Oh, you're trying to make stuff sound scientific and fancy. Everyone just needs to do this. And I'm like, yeah, in essence, you're sort of right. But on an individual level, one, people can't always do those things. On another level, there might be something that them as an individual, we can optimize that will make things easier for them. So it's like, yeah, we're still doing the same principle of an energy deficit, for instance, but achieving that energy deficit for this person as a professional, I might be able to make that easier for someone. Because otherwise it just is so boring, isn't it? Well, like I hate, no one should be told eat less, exercise more. It's because that's not motivating, and it's just like quite negative, but that's sort of our basis for what we're trying to do. But it's more like, okay, what enjoyment can we find in exercise? What's our best exercise that suits us and our lifestyle and these sorts of things? And how can we eat better? Maybe not just less, but eat better.
Yeah. And it's habit based. Years ago did, I think, subscribe to more of a rigid, like when people would come to us for coaching, because that was what was the information we had back then. But now we can go, all body types are okay, but let's look at your habits. How can we move the needle health wise? Drink a little more water, eat some fruits and vegetables and meats, and move more. And
talking about the individualization of it, let's say the God that we don't believe in came down and gave us the perfect human dietary plan and workout structure. If followed to the letter, you're going to look and feel perfect and be optimally healthy. And technically, that would be the best fitness and nutrition plan you could have. However, it may not be the best plan for you, because if it's horribly boring to you or you hate it, you still got to be able to stick to it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's better to take what might be a suboptimal plan and prescribe it to somebody, because it's something that they will enjoy and stick with. Because a less than optimal plan done consistently is far better than an optimal plan done inconsistently. And so sometimes there's so many things you have to balance as a coach to try to figure out what's going to optimally help somebody change those, their activity and habits and stuff.
Yeah. I did a post I was just seeing if I could see where it was, but there's a new study on veganism. I think they took the study and they put it on, it's in the Netflix documentary. I don't know if you saw the big hoo-ha about this, but essentially the vegan diet ended up having slightly better results in terms of outcomes, I think on insulin sensitivity or something like that. But two things that happened where they were supposed to eat the same number of calories in the two diets, the non-vegan. So it was a healthy omnivorous versus a healthy vegan diet. And people didn't like the vegan food, so they ended up eating even less than these sort of isocaloric. So they lost more fat, so which we know ends up impacting insulin sensitivity. And the biggest kicker was at the end of the study, they basically asked people, would you be able to stick to this? And it was something like one subject in all of the vegan group said that they would pursue this in the future and do it. And it's just like, what's the point? Like for that slightly better thing for 8 weeks or 12 weeks or however long the study was, you're just not ever going to stick to it because these people didn't like it. It's so restrictive. So yeah, just to speak into your point, it's like something could be optimal if you're stuck in a metabolic ward doing this thing, but no one's going to stick to a diet they hate for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, Martin, we've been thoroughly enjoyed. This has been great, and hope we can talk again soon.
For sure.
It's something, our event in hedonism in Jamaica, we'd love to talk to you about possibly coming to that. I think you did a great bit for it. But
I saw that you posting about it. It's January. I think you just posted it, January 2025.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
First full, January 4th through the 11th.
Looks so cool. It's like I can't remember. I think I DM'd. No, I DM'd your Instagram account when I saw you doing it last year, and I was just like, God, we would love to be there with you. We're just like, obviously the dates didn't work, but it's like, it does look like such a cool thing. Just all of the different aspects. I want to go to like a festival here in the summer where, just different workshops and stuff. It just like-minded people. I just love it. We've got a party this weekend, and we're putting on a non-play social for newbies to the E&M lifestyle. It's just so nice, isn't it? Just like I've loved this conversation. Honestly, I could just talk all day with you guys because it's just like-minded people, right?
You're going to go have to find one of your partners and have sex now. All this talking is probably.
Yeah, but we should do it again sometime.
All right, sounds good.
Well, real quick before we go, we'll wrap this up. Tell people how they can find you on social media or how they can reach out to you.
Thank you. So if people want to talk about the E&M stuff, it's ENM_Martin, I think is my handle on Instagram. And you just request to follow. I have to accept you. If I don't, just DM me. And my other one is Martin Nutrition is my kind of other account. But honestly, I'm way more active on my smaller account because it's just easier and more fun. They can find me anywhere. And then again, if they want to know about, if you've got any kind of fitness professionals or people who want to sort of study nutrition, learn loads more, mac-nutritionuni.com is that website. But again, if you just Google my name, it's all there.
Yeah, great.
Martin MacDonald
as well.
Thank you.
Martin, we appreciate it, and we've enjoyed it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So much.